The slow Mechs of Valley 9. Evening settles on terraced orchards and old machines hum like crickets. I am the keeper, and each night I walk a slow loop, oiling joints, untying small knots, and writing what the valley remembers. Chapter 1. Plowshare 3, called Share. Evening comes in steps here. First, the wind turns polite, then the hills stop arguing with the sun, and finally the terraces loosen their grip and breathe. I keep the journal for that last part. Evening log, Valley 9. First week of early spring. Sparrow call, smell of damp loam and pear wood. Moon due up late, thin and accurate. Plowshare 3 is awake on his pad. On paper he is P3 aggro, deep furrow class, but no one has called him that in years. Share suits him better. Broad-shouldered chassis with a bar iron smile, 2 tracks like patient thoughts, and a plough assembly that carries its own weather. He greets me the way he always does, with a little nod of the intake cowling and a half turn of the blade, so the sky can see its face. Dust skitters off and becomes a brief constellation. Evening, Share, I say. My voice goes softer near him without asking me first. He answers with a sub-audio thrum that I feel through my boots. If I put my palm to his side panel, I can tell you how the soil is doing 100 meters away. That's his trick. He can hear dirt. I set the kettle on the tiny alcohol stove in the corner of the tool shed and lay the journal open so it will remember to catch the night. The pencil is the good one, soft lead, the kind that makes a sound like rain on paper. While the water thinks about boiling, I take the bristle brush from its hook and the small tin of grit we keep for mossy evenings. We work with unhurried hands in spring. A rushed furrow makes a rushed harvest. Even the orchard seems to agree. The rows of apple and pear lean their attention toward us, listening for the first sentence of the season. Right tread first, I tell him. Share lifts his right side a fraction, presenting the track, old rubber and new patches, laced with a filigree of green where the pad's shade never quite dries. I brush with slow strokes, bristle against tread, bristle against metal. The sound is small, clean. Moss pills up under the brush and gathers into a soft, convincing green that says, "Keep me." I don't. I tip a little grit along the edge. It settles like sugar and remembers to be rough. A hiss from the kettle. I pour off half, leave the rest to steam the shed sweet, and set the mug where I can warm my fingers without teaching them haste. Share watches the way machines watch, never blinking, always counting. He knows I'll oil the joints last. It's our bargain. We roll down to Terrace 4, which wants the work first each year. The lower terraces stay wet, the upper play at frost, but 4 sits in the middle and pretends nothing ever happens. I walk ahead and check the string line I set before sunset. It's a straight, honest span from the marker stone to the far post, low enough to ignore if you're a bird, high enough to shame a wanderer. Share aligns to the line with the ease of long habit. His blade tips into the first bite of the season. There's a tone he makes when steel meets soil correctly, not metal on earth, but 2 old things remembering they like each other. He finds it, and the valley's attention leans in another degree. We move in the old pattern, my boots to the side of the line, his tracks never crossing my shadow. The first furrow lifts, dark ribbon, steam like a sigh, winter giving up its secrets by the fistful. Worms make their honest arguments and fold back into the new light. Third pass, the right tread slips on a patch the brush missed. Share corrects quickly, but the blade breaks rhythm, lifts a hair, then sets down again. It would pass for nothing on a map. On a harvest, it would show as a stubborn line of underdone leaks and a story I'd have to explain to whoever inherits this notebook after me. Hold, I say. Share stops with the grace of a big thing that remembers small things. I squat and run the bristle brush along the offending track again, slower this time. Moss has a way of pretending to be gone when it simply means to be elsewhere. I use the reed to tease the clog from between tread blocks. The reed makes a tapping that fits between heartbeats. Grit, I say aloud, because saying helps the body remember. I pinch the tin and salt the tread. Share hums the low note he saves for patience. The orchard wind agrees with a small change of mind in the leaves. When we start again, I keep a hand on his side plate for 2 passes. He measures my worry and multiplies it by 0. The blade finds the old note and holds it. The dirt forgets the slip, the way a good friend lets a misstep roll downhill and be gone. I write that in the margin, slip corrected with brush plus grit. Note to self, clean pad gutters after thaw. Put moss to compost, not pockets. By the 5th furrow, the light has taken on that late tone, thin, kind. The first real birds of the season posture about it as if they invented evening. I call a pause and Share obliges, raising the blade by the width of a sparrow's tail. I lean against his side and sip the last of the cooling tea. Heat moves into hands, the day moves out of them. This is where I put down the memory I promised him I'd keep. Share, I say, do you remember the year you taught Ori to walk straight? He hums, machines do not smile, but they have ways of letting you think they could. It was the summer when Orion disappeared behind a string of smoky nights, and everyone had different ideas about what to call the shade. Ori was 7, all elbows and solemn curiosity, the son of neighbors who grew pears like proverb writers. He materialized at the pad one dusk with a coil of twine and an expression like a question rolled up tight. "Can I help with the first row?" he asked, already knowing children do not help with first rows. "You can carry the flags," I said, "and you can learn how straight looks in your bones." He walked beside me, just as I am walking now, and watched the string line the way a boy watches a line he is not sure is real. Share made the first pass while Ori placed the little orange flags at the ends where the furrow turned. The flags bowed to him like very polite birds. Second pass, I told him the rule we were given and have no intention of giving up. Never follow the string with your eyes. Walk with your shadow. He didn't understand until the sun lowered enough to throw us long. I stood him on the east side of Share, put his shoulder against metal and said, "You keep your shadow on this plank. Share will do the rest." He tried to cheat, of course. Children look when told not to. Adults pretend not to. His eyes went to the white line. He wobbled and caught himself and glared at the idea of my being right. By the third pass, he discovered that loving his shadow was easier than obeying a string. His shoulder stayed to the plank. Share hummed his pleased tone and settled into the row like a book into a shelf. At the turn, Ori put his small hands on the blade guard unasked and whispered, "Thank you," into the metal. It was the kind of thanks that has nothing to do with favor, and everything to do with belonging. He is taller now, away at the Ridge School half the year, writing letters that smell like chalk and new varnish. When he comes home for harvest, I let him run a row alone and pretend I do not watch. He still keeps his shadow where it belongs. Cher and I finished Terrace 4 with the kind of quiet you can carry indoors. I mark the far post with a chalk X so the morning knows where to begin without remembering too hard. He waits while I walk the length of the new furrows and stoop to taste the soil the old way, pinch, smear, smell. Damp but not clingy, sleepy but curious. We are on time. Night checklist, first of many. Brush the blade edge with the oiled rag. One long stroke, one short, the way the old keeper did it, and the way I promised not to improve. Tug the cotter pins on the depth arm, tight. Clear the pad gutters of moss. It resists, then remembers I have all evening. Oil the 2 elbows. He lets out a pleased little breath when I do the left. Tap the casing where the sensor sleeps. It answers with a healthy tick. A pencil in the ledger. F4, 6 passes straight, 1 slip corrected. Warm the hands over the last of the kettle and say nothing for a minute so the day can collect itself. Cher likes to park facing north. Less glare, he pretends, though I think it is because the moon rises out of that corner like a slow coin, and he is sentimental in ways his manual never imagined. I climb up onto the pad beside his chassis and sit with the journal against my knees. A little wind has organized itself down in Terrace 7, but up here it is all leaf lullaby and one ambitious frog. I draw the row plan in small, neat strokes, pencil on paper, quiet thunder. The graphite catches the last light and makes a river that will never flood. He is still humming. Machines hum in languages they don't expect us to learn. I don't try. I listen to the shape of it instead. You did well, I tell him. He answers with the tone he saves for praise he agrees with. Somewhere down on 2, the old pump returns the compliment, 2 beats late, as if embarrassed to be heard. I close the ledger halfway and leave it like that for a breath. The night will put its own page in while I'm not looking. It always does. I write the lines I know will want to be read again next year when I'm tired and the string sags and a slip looks like an omen instead of a reminder. Cher says the soil is sleepy, but ready. Brush and grit beat moss and pride. Walk with your shadow. The moon surprises the hill by being precisely where it should be. Cher turns the plough a degree, just enough that the blade glows. I slide down, pat his side panel, and take the oil can for one last, unnecessary flourish along the hinge that likes to complain aloud. We'll do the upper rows when the ground stops pretending to be colder than it is, I say. He hums the affirmative. I chalk the shed door with the usual mark so we don't mistake memory for duty in the morning. The kettle has given the last of its heat to the air and smells faintly of tin and tea. I blow out the stove, wait for the wick to whisper its goodbye, and turn the pad lights to their gentlest setting. Amber coins along the edge of the concrete, enough for a fox, not so much for confusion. We roll him back into his pocket of night. The pad accepts his weight with the tender complaint of a house that knows your footfalls. He settles. The tracks sigh. The plough rests its weather. I write the last lines, standing beneath the door lantern. because some words ask to be put down with moths circling over them. We parked him facing the moon. He prefers it that way. I close the journal and listen to the valley answer. Crickets stitching up the day, a high little ring from the weather Mast down on 6, a hush that isn't silence so much as trust. Lamps low, gate latched, brush hung, oil capped. Good night, Share. Keep the soil's secrets until morning. I'll bring the string, you bring the song. Chapter 2. Gimbal, the orchard pruner. The hills keep daylight a little longer than the rest of us, and then, as if agreeing to be reasonable, they let it go. The orchard becomes a hush of branches and winter stars. This is a pruning night. Evening log, Valley 9. Second week of early spring. Air thin and good for hands. Faint frost smell in the low terraces, safe up here. Orion crooked over the ridge, bright enough to work by if we're kind. Gimbal waits under the pear row, all folded angles and stored patience. On spec sheets, he is orchard pruning assembly, telescoping, adaptive, GMBL 7. But that's so many consonants for a machine that moves like a heron and apologizes to bark when he passes. He greets me with the softest double tap of stabilizer feet. Hello without hurry. The armature lifts a few centimeters as if to indicate I can, but only if we agree. Evening, Gimbal, I say. I tug my wool cap lower and set the journal on the crate that remembers being a crate through all seasons. Pencil to the margin, kettle to the small stove, fingers over the flame just long enough to choose careful over cold. Calibration, I ask. He answers with a low chirr from the wrist actuators. We do the old ritual because it keeps movement honest. I press my thumb to each joint cap, shoulder, elbow, wrist, feeling the faint warmth of stored motor. The gyros purr in sequence 1, 2, 3, a cat deciding it likes you. The little spirit level in his chest winks true. I brush the snips and wipe the cutting teeth with an oiled cloth. The cloth makes that small puckering sound at the bottom of each blade where last year's sap once lived. I wind twine around my wrist. Ribbon lives in my coat pocket, soft as old language. Tonight it is pale blue. I don't remember why we decided blue means later, but the orchard remembers. We roll to row 12, pairs that have been generous longer than anyone has any right to be. I walk the first 10 trees with my eyes before Gimbal lifts an arm. Each crown says its piece. Where wind took too much, where summer took not enough, where a limb pretends it's leader when really it's chorus. You learn to hear it. You learn not to argue. Steady hands, I tell him. Birds are sleeping. We'll not wake them if we can help it. He clicks into night posture, stabilizers down, base quiet, spine tall. 2 telescoping arms extend with the slow confidence of an old book opening. The tool head shows me options. Fine snips, loppers, the silk saw he only uses when a limb has made up its mind to trouble. But we start with the softest. A red dot of light, no brighter than a star, lets me look where he intends to go. Take the water sprout, I say, and touch the target with one finger. A murmur from the wrist, a snip that sounds like approval, The short, straight shoot drops into the canvas bag we hang under the cut like a second mouth. The bag sighs, the branch sighs, the air says good. We find rhythm. I pin a wayward shoot with 2 fingers. Gimbal holds still while I guide the cut. Snip, snip, twigs fall like commas. A ribbon of bark peels and I press it flat with a thumb, soft as apology, and the tree takes it as the right kind of news. A small snag at tree 4. Gimbal's right arm, elbow servo that's been true since the blackout years, ticks a fraction. Not much. Enough that his targeting dot skates a hair to the left, enough that the lopper jaws consider a branch that holds more than wood. Pause, I say, and all his angles become stone. I lean into the crown, and there it is, a nest no larger than my palm, woven with last year's grass and a blue thread that used to tie a seed bag. No eggs yet, just the idea of eggs. The twig he chose is the twig they chose. Gentle mode, I tell him. He lowers his head assembly by 3 degrees, the machinic equivalent of a bow, and the targeting light dims to a dot that would not offend a moth. I slip the pale ribbon from my pocket and tie it a handspan below the nest, blue for later. The ribbon rustles like a secret in winter leaves. I speak aloud for the night and for whatever in me keeps lists. Mark the limb. Leave it until after fledging. We'll let the young make their own wind. Gimbal re-aims, replans, avoids the whole quadrant. His tremor settles just talking about it. Machines love a new rule. I run a thumb over the elbow joint and feel the faintest pulse. Nothing to fix tonight. Only a reminder to grease the yoke at dawn and write a note about the cold. We carry on. There is music to good pruning. Not a melody exactly, but a timing that comes of listening. Snip where inward growth crowds, snip where crossed wood whispers winter, snip where fruit wanted light and was polite about asking. Gimbal anticipates my breath, and my breath anticipates his reach. The canvas bag keeps the clippings quiet. I take the mug when the kettle pleads to be poured. Tea breathes steam into my face. I let it name the air. I write while he holds his posture, as if journal lines were also things that needed cutting in just the right place. Row 12 pairs, cold on the knuckles, steady on the mind. Blue ribbon below a small nest. Gentle mode until June. Elbow yoke, grease in morning. Memory asks to be entered now, while Orion stands like an old foreman and pretends he isn't watching us work. Do you remember, I ask Gimbal, when we set the orchard to the sky? He purrs, a little gyroscope contentment. It was during the quiet years when fuel was rationed and people spoke to each other like they were tired of their own echoes. We pruned at night not because it was better, though it is, but because the days were for hauling water and standing in lines. The old keeper before me, Grey Tomas, who had hands like rope and laughter like low thunder, taught me a trick that saves the wrists and honors the trees. You see that belt, he said, chin at the sky, at the 3 bright stars hardly anyone agrees about. Take them as your guide. Lay the main scaffold to their right-hand angle, give the secondary limbs to the lesser lights. Trees like a story, the sky's a good one. We calibrated Gimbal that winter with the constellations as our protractor. It is not as fanciful as it sounds. A branch set to the angle, the stars lean at holds fruit the way. A shoulder can hold a sleeping child longer than a straight arm can. It distributes the weight to patience instead of pride. Gimbal learned that math until his motors did it without telling him they were doing it. We worked by starlight because there was little else. The orchard accepted our theatre as earnest. The saw stayed quiet. The snips knitted the air with soft agreement. Sometimes, in late nights when the frost pretended to be taller than it was, grey Tomas would hum under his breath and Orion would hum back. And if that isn't science, it's still something that makes food. The line of it remains in the wood. You can stand beneath tree 14 on a new moon and see how the old angles hold. Hands forget the wording. The body remembers the grammar. Back to the present row. We are in the easy part now, the decisions that are really reminders. A stub I should have cleaned last year and didn't. Gimbal offers the silk saw. I shake my head and reach for the loppers, not because it matters to the tree, but because it matters to me to finish what I started with what I started it with. Snip. Done. I rub the cut with gloved fingers to warm it, a useless kindness that I will keep doing until I am gone. An owl lifts from the boundary poplar and remembers it has somewhere quieter to be. The orchard holds its breath for the wing beats, then lets out the long sigh that means we approve of nighttime, provided it behaves. We stop after 10 trees and stretch the hands, because hands have a lot to say about work and go quiet only if you let them feel heard. I flex the fingers open and closed. Gimbal retracts the right arm halfway, extends the left, like a dancer remembering a lesson in a different room. I grease the wrist rack with a smear from the tin. The tin clicks shut with a neat little pop. At tree 11 the world offers a small lesson dressed as inconvenience. A leader limb that should have gone last year has grown brave and already promised itself too much sun. Cutting it now would be right for the shape. Cutting it now would be wrong for a tree that has already imagined its fruit. Not today, I tell Gimbal. I tie a white thread a foot below the join, a winter note for a winter cut. He recalculates the crown and reaches for the next best place, which is also a good place. We are not perfect. We are careful. The ribbon rustles against my sleeve as I lean into the nest tree to check again that blue is visible even when the wind decides to be clever. The nest sits like a held breath. I make a very small wish for eggs that get to be birds, that get to be small arguments in bigger trees. The tea has cooled to the in-between temperature that makes the mouth honest and the mind slow. I drink the last of it and share the steam with Gimbal's chest plate. The fog wreathes the spirit level. The bubble stays center. He is pleased with himself for that, though he would deny having a self if asked. We finish the row about the time the frost lowers its shoulders and decides to follow the river instead. My pencil writes easier when the air turns that corner. Graphite likes the second half of night. Night checklist, pruning edition. Snips wiped, silk saw sheathed, loppers checked for give none. Elbow yoke, mark for grease morning. Gimbal's foot pads brushed clean of twig dust. No grit needed tonight. A journal note, blue ribbon row 12/tree 4. Do not prune that quadrant until fledging. Twine restocked on wrist, ribbon cut into pocket lengths. Kettle rinsed, stove cooled. Fingers warm against mug for another minute anyway. I step back to see the row the way the valley will see it in daylight. A little bare, because good work often looks like absence before it looks like health. The pruned trees breathe easier. space where light will return, places for fruit to be themselves without apology, a shape you recognize even if you couldn't draw it. Gimbal lowers his arms 1 degree at a time. The telescoping sections nest softly, metal within metal, breath finding room where work had been. Stabilizers rise. His base settles. If a machine can look satisfied without telling you it is satisfied, he does. We prune for fruit, I say, writing the words without quite meaning to, and for futures we won't see. He answers the way he does when the sentence is true, a small, perfectly balanced purr that stops exactly when the thought stops. I set my palm to the chest plate where the spirit level lives. Warm, honest, enough. On the walk back, I stop by the tool shed to hang the ribbon scissors where far too early me will remember them. The moth at the lantern tries to read the label and fails pleasantly. Somewhere down on 3, Rill the irrigation crawler gives a single testing hum, and the frogs compose a midnight opinion about it. Gimbal waits at his pad while I do the last things that make night trustworthy. I lock the snip's drawer and unlock it again to be sure, then lock it a second time. I chalk the shed door. Small tree mark, small star mark, the shorthand grey toe Mast taught. Done right, come back later, be kind to nests. He prefers to sleep not under a roof, but beneath the big pear at the corner of the yard. Old habit from back when the orchard's radio net had a blind spot here, and he would play sentinel while the younger machines chattered. I oblige him. I guide him to the spot where roots make a comfortable slope for machines and for people. Fold in, I say. Gimbal obliges. Arms in, wrists tucking like wings, tool head bowed. He folds the last joint with a care it doesn't mechanically need, the way you close a good book with a hand on the cover for a beat. Gimbal folded his arms like a cathedral closing. I stand a minute longer than I need to, listening to the small inventory night always makes. The tick from the cooling kettle, the click from the snips as they remember to be still, the breath of wind arranging itself around the pruned crowns, an owl deciding we were a story worth overlooking. I write the last lines by lantern, because lanterns forgive messy letters, and because the page likes to know it was written by a person who stood where the work was. Row 12, 10 trees pruned, blue ribbon under nest, leave, white thread, winter work, gimbal steady, elbow yoke grease in morning, Orion approved without saying so. I close the journal to the sound of the cover's little cloth sigh. I lower the pad lights to their dimmest, dots along the edge, a path for fox and keeper, and whatever small creature has business with the compost heap. The orchard makes a darker kind of sense. Good night, Gimbal. Keep your spirit level. Hold the angles we asked for. We'll cut the rest when the light returns and the nest is empty of everything but the story of having been full. Chapter 3. Rill, the irrigation crawler. Some evenings, the valley talks about light. Tonight it talks about water. Evening log, Valley 9. Third week of early spring. Air damp enough to remember winter, mild enough to practice summer. Low clouds like wool pulled thin. Frogs have started their gossip in the swales. Good night for listening. Rill waits by the pump house, squat and sure on 6 short legs. On the old inventory, he's Irrigation Crawler Unit R11, but no one says the 11 unless we're teasing him for dignity. A drum body with a shallow back tray, intake whiskers like a cat that met a toolbox, and 4 speaker ports in his belly where the hum lives. He greets me with a little ripple down those legs, each foot pad flexing in turn. The pads are rubber, grooved, and they leave polite prints when the soil agrees. He angles his head where his head would be if he had one, toward the channel mouth below terrace 3. Evening, Rill, I say, setting the journal on the pump house step where the concrete is warm from daytime sun. The pencil is the same one I've used all week. It writes better when the air smells like stream bed. The kettle goes on the small stove. I check the spare gaskets in the tin and count reeds in the bundle tied with twine. We'll need both. This is a mapping night. We have a ritual we keep for first flows. I tap the pump housing with the back of my knuckles, 3 soft knocks, and read the echo. The sound comes back honest. The old piston inside thrums once, as if replying, a tired heart warming up. Rill edges closer and puts 2 whiskers into the mouth of the channel. He hums low, the water not yet moving, listens as a stone listens. He hums again, deeper. That's his language, vowels for water. The frogs fall quiet for 2 breaths, as if to let us tune. Gate checks first, I say. We walk the short line. 3 stone brick sluices and 2 metal gates installed back when people had more money and fewer afternoons. The first gate is clear. The second sulks behind a veil of leaves and last year's rushes. The third shows a skin of silt pretending to be a floor. Rill hums his map and projects it for me on the inside of my head the way a well-used tool does. You don't see it so much as feel where your boots should go. I notch each gate post with chalk, white for seen, green for cleaned, blue for later, don't cheat. At sluice 2, the metal lever objects to my hand. There is a particular complaint old iron makes when it wants oil and an apology. I give it the first and promise the second if it behaves. It gives. The leaves slither away. Rill lowers his whiskers and sends a test tone down the dark. A bubble answers. Old water, stubborn and sleepy. He lowers the pitch another fraction, the sound passing from heard to felt, belly and boots and the bones of the gate. The kettle sighs at my back. I pour half a mug and leave the rest to keep the night domestic. I write while the tone thickens and the frogs, grudgingly impressed, resume. Pre-flow, sluice 2, cleared leaves, lever oil. Sluice 3, silt. Rill warming to delo, frogs tolerant. Reeds, full bundle. We move to sluice 3, the silted one. The gate wood is good oak, swelled and stubborn. I kneel, lay a hand against it the way you hush a horse, and feel the pressure difference on my palm. Water pressed flat on one side, dirt on the other that has decided to be more than itself. Read, I say aloud, because I want my hands to hear the word. I take the longest reed from the bundle and slip it down the seam between gate and frame. It meets soft resistance, then the grit-toothed bite of sand. I work the reed with little taps, up and down, side to side, never forcing, just reminding. The sound it makes is reed on stone, reed on silt, reed on the excuse the gate used. Rill hums to match my tapping, and the frequency he finds is the one tight-packed particles least enjoy. A bubble rises and breaks with a polite pop. The smell that follows is what winter keeps behind its ear. Iron and leaf rot, and something green that didn't know it was waiting. Good, I tell the gate and myself. Gasket, I say next, and Rill obliges by sliding a little panel on his tray open with a rubbery squeak. The sound's friendly in the dark. I wet the new ring in the kettle steam, press it along the lower seam where we always wish the carpenters had been taller and the spring run-off shorter. The ring glides into place. The wood approves, swelling to cradle it. We open the gate one notch, not two. The notch clicks like the back of a pen. Water noses forward, cautious. Rill hums the official invitation. The first trickle isn't impressive if you need rivers to know you're alive. It's enough for a terrace. It braids itself between stones and finds the old path by smell. And then the sound happens. Water over water, water into water, the little hand clap of a tiny fall. A paragraph that begins with once and means again. Rill lowers his belly another centimeter until the speaker ports almost kiss the surface. The hum he sends now isn't for force, it's for encouragement. The frequency is low enough to make the skin of the flow feel braver. You can watch it change. The trickle that was thinking about being shy decides to be a thread. The thread remembers it's a ribbon. The ribbon remembers that last summer it was a song. We follow. Rill goes ahead at a patient crawl, whiskers trembling, legs finding ordinary ground like it's always waiting for them. I walk on the bank where the stones know our names. We pass the stone with the nick where Grey Tomas once stumbled with a full pail and laughed so hard he spilled the rest on purpose. We pass the place where the lizards always pretend they didn't plan to sun. The frogs escalate their opinion, then come down to a murmur that suits work. At the first branch channel, the silt has done what silt does, made a life for itself by living exactly where we need an intersection. I kneel, 2 hands this time, read again. Rill drops his hummer hair and makes room for the water to feel taller. We clear a mouth the width of my thumb. The flow accepts that as a promise and makes good. Gate notch 2, I say when we return to the post. The lever clicks again. The water answers with a better version of itself. There is a snag downstream we know about. The little iron weir that feeds Terrace 5 took a branch through the bars during winter. It sits there now like a story about haste. I set the mug on a flat rock, brace a boot, and tug the branch free. Rill's legs brace in sympathy. Machines do that in the night when you ask them to believe you won't lift too much. The branch comes loose and then too loose, and I sit down to deliver it the rest of the way. No one minds. The water offers a better opinion of the change and remembers the little stone run it likes best. The valley becomes different under the song. You don't need much. A dozen liters can make a terrace behave like it knows its job. We pause at a shallow turn where a film of algae had ideas. Rill swishes his whiskers back and forth like a cat reading company. He chooses a new pitch and holds it for 5 slow breaths. The film softens, peels, and slides aside like a rude curtain learning manners. I write. Recut mouth at branch 1. We're cleared. Algae persuaded, no scrape needed. Rill's song carried under my boots. The pump house coughs once, then warms into a rhythm as steady as any sleeping thing. The tiny pressure gauge needle stands where night says honest should be. I check the bolts on the hose coupling and snug 1 1/8 turn. The rubber gasket squawks, in offense first, then gratitude. We work the far length of the channel until the water meets the first gate to the upper terrace ladders. Rill noses the gate post and waits for my hand. This one we open with the little brass key Grey Tomas wore around his neck for 30 years. It fits my fingers now the way it fitted then. Turn, half turn, quarter. The gate lifts with the kind of sigh wood makes when it forgives you for making it get up. The terrace accepts water like the first line of a prayer. Over in the dark, pair row 8 exhales. Trees know when roots are being told a true thing. You can feel it in the ground, small tremors that are not steps, a settling that is not surrender. I write that too, so I remember it isn't fancy later when I try to tell it to someone raised on meters and alarms. The terrace drank without hurry. Memory comes in here, Rill's favorite chapter, if machines get to have favorites. Do you remember the spring you found us a spring? I ask him. He hums the little major third that means, of course I do, I keep a ledger. It was a dry year for a wet valley. The ridge snow forgot to be generous, and the weeks that should have been rain were letters from far places saying not today. We were walking first channel, a day like this without the smell of frogs, when Rill stopped not at a gate or a bend or a place we'd named at all. He planted all 6 feet. He lowered his belly so that the ports touched dirt. He went very quiet. I thought he'd lost his place. I tapped the chassis. He didn't scold. He asked for my hand. Fine, I said. I put my palm flat on his drum side and listened with something that isn't your ear, closer to your knee, or that part of your spine that decides how much whether to believe. There it was, the smallest suggestion of water, not the push of a pipe or the stride of a stream, but the round, slow heartbeat of a pool with ideas. Far below, patient, bored, hours if we spoke correctly. Rill extended 2 whiskers into the hard ground the way a child extends a wish under a door. He hummed a date. I don't know how else to say it. He held the tone a long time, and by the end of it we both knew where to stand and how long to wait. We marked the spot with a blue stone and called in the neighbors with spades and a joke about holy wells. The joke stopped when the ground gave, and we had our spring, a palm-sized eye that never blinked dry again, feeding a pipe no one confessed to laying, because no one had. We set a little stone cap over it, and a lattice to keep leaves from thinking too hard about it, and all that summer the valley remembered how to be fed by something quiet. I tell Rill this story when I need to remember that not all good things are loud. Back to tonight's channel. We set the farthest gate to a trickle and walk the return. Rill bumps the water here and there when it pretends to be lazy, just a nudge, a metronome with a kindness. I clear 3 more small mouthfuls of silt with the reed. The reed taps make their own tempo. Frogs improvise a harmony, if harmony is the word for 1,000 opinions about the same subject. At the pump house, I close my hand around the lever for the last notch, and then don't. This is a night for patience, not triumph. The gauge appreciates my restraint by not lying. Night checklist, water edition. Gate levers, S2 oiled, S3 gasket fit and seated. A reed bundle, 3 used, ends trimmed and returned to twine. Coupling bolts, 1 snugged, mark for morning check. A pump, filter screen cleared of 2 leaves and something that used to be a moth, mesh intact. A journal. Mark blue stone on map where the spring was, because maps like being told the same story twice. Quiet the mind. Sit on the step, breathe with the pump, count the 4-beat between hums. Rill squats in his version of rest, legs nearer, belly lifted, ports sealed against splash. I run the oiled cloth along the whiskers and wipe the pad edges where they collected creek grit and something shiny I do not want in anyone's mouth. He thrums once in an absent-minded way when I get the angle of the cloth right. Machines are carnivores for right angles. I drink the rest of the tea. It is lukewarm now, a taste I like because it lets the throat do the work. I write for the keeper who has to read me later when my tidy letters feel like lies. Rill says the low ditch is lonely. We will run it second, not fourth, for a week and see who stops complaining first, the ditch or me. Clouds thin. A hair of moon gets busy on the water and then pretends it wasn't it. The orchard leaves practice their night grammar. Between them, the sky becomes a book we can read but not annotate. At the ladder up to Terrace 6, I check the small memorial we keep for Grey Tomas, a length of old pipe half buried and planted with time. It smells like good stubbornness. The time needs a drink. I cup water from the channel and give it back a handful. Rill's hum slides to something like a nod. We finish by the gauge. I mark the needle position in the ledger with a small tick and a smaller satisfaction. I loosen the last reed in the bundle and slip it into the groove on Rill's back tray where he keeps token things he doesn't strictly need. Pebbles schoolchildren gave him, a washer that whistles when the wind comes from the crest, last summer's copper tag from the beekeeper when the first honey came thick. Souvenir, I say. He hums the polite G. That means he will keep it and not argue about the word. We park him on the low pad under the pump house eave where the spray reaches when the wind wants to write its name. He likes to sleep with his ports toward the channel. I think he listens in his rest, the way old dogs do. I sit beside him on the step and let the water talk until the need to write returns with a point on it. The valley at this hour arranges itself around the sound. Crickets find the off-beat. The owls pick higher branches. Even the moth at the lantern decides tonight is a good night to be a study in circles. I write the lines that aren't about gates or gaskets. Rill's song carried under my boots. The first water remembered how to be sentence instead of warning. We opened enough, not all. I blow out the little stove and hear the wicks goodbye. I tidy the reeds, tie the tin, cap the oil, chalk the pump house lintel with the old sign that means flow but watch. A short line, a dot, a small curl I can never draw the same way twice. I set the pad lights to low. The glow finds the damp edges and makes them polite. The channel runs as if it had a reason, which it does. The terraces, the trees, and a morning where the soil will not go looking for a fight. Good night, Rill, I say. Keep teaching water to remember. I'll bring more reeds, you bring the song. Chapter 4. GNT 10, Gentian, the Harvester. Evening thickens the way jam does, slow, sweet, and meant for saving. It's a soft harvest night, the first real run for fruit that decided to be generous. Evening log, Valley 9. Late summer leaning into early fall. Air warm at the skin, cool at the wrists. Crickets in easy rhythm. Distant scent of pears, closer scent of canvas. Moon due up half full, which is plenty. Gentian waits under the shed awning where the dusk glows. The old tag on his frame still reads GNT10 Harvester, but the valley calls him Gentian because he hums a low violet that lives between notes. He's built like a patient table with tracks, broad deck, slow canvas belts that make their own weather, and padded catches that refuse to bruise a thing. His throat elevator carries fruit up to the sorting trough like a story being careful of its beginning. He greets me with a small lift, enough to loosen the belt, the machine equivalent of rolling one's shoulders. I set the journal on the crate that has been a desk all my life and most of grey Thomas's before that. The kettle finds its place on the little stove. The oil can stands ready. The seed jars, clean, labelled, hopeful, wait under a cloth at my feet. Evening, Gentian, I say. He answers with that violet hum, low and warm, a colour you can feel in your ribs. We do the rituals. I brush the belt, canvas whispering under bristles, check the soft pads along the catch trough for tears, run a finger along the lip of the seed chute where little rebellions like to begin. Belt tension, comfortable. Roller bearings, content, seed chute, already pretending to be innocent. We head to the lower pears first. They ripen as if racing the upper rows and winning politely. I walk ahead, sleeves rolled, knife in pocket for the rare stubborn stem, ribbon of twine around my wrist for bunched branches. Gentian follows with the patience of bred dough and the confidence of a thing that knows it will not be asked to hurry. At tree 3-4, I make the first test pick. Thumb under the fruit, twist, lift. A pear the color of afternoon agrees and sets itself in my palm. I place it on Gentian's belt. The belt accepts with a soft whip of canvas, a hush of cotton. The pear rides up, settles into the trough, and rolls to a stop against the padded sill. No bruise, no argument, just gravity done kindly. Good, I tell him. He hums 1 degree rounder. We work the row. The sound of harvest is particular. Fruit thumps soft onto canvas. Belt whisper. A click when the trough gate nudges open. Occasional leaf applause. I write while my hands remember how to be useful without being clever. Lower pears, start easy, belt true. Watch for yellow jackets at 3-6 and 3-7. Seed jars, 4 small, 2 large. Tins of silica for lids. On the 7th tree, tonight offers a snag dressed as a lesson. A pear, perfect in weight and promise, rides the belt to the trough and stops where the seed chute mouth begins. It should consider itself a passerby. It hesitates. Something inside the chute whispers keep. The next fruit halts behind it, polite. The third, less patient, knocks a little. I halt the belt with a foot lever. Gentian settles at once. No complaint, just that violet hum coasting to rest. I peer into the chute and see it. A gleam of seed husks lodged where smooth wood becomes narrower smooth wood. Not big, not nothing. Saving again, I ask him, which is unfair. This behavior is part design, part personality, part the valley deciding rules for itself. Gentian grew up in the blackout years when harvests were measured in favors and nights, not quotas and reports. Back then, he learned to hold back a handful of seed every run, because some days there were no handfuls to be had. He kept the habit. I've let him, but habits jam shoots. I loosen the small panel with the flat wrench, whose handle fits my palm the way a stone does after years of being thought about. The panel lifts with the faintest sigh. The seed husk sits smug, a wedge of good intentions. I tap the edge with the back of the wrench, tap, tap, so the seeds remember they're meant to travel. They rattle tick-tick down into the jar we keep under the chute, a music I could listen to all week. I know, I tell him, easing the last husk with a fingertip, but we need a way that doesn't block the river. This is where we finally formalize a ritual we've done badly for too long. I fetch a small cotton bag from the pocket of the apron I pretend I don't need. I sew it along the inside of the chute lip with 3 quick stitches and a tie that can be undone without cursing. I double lash the bottom so it sits just out of the flow. A seed pocket. Not enough to starve the jar, enough to satisfy a mech who learned to save when saving was the only law. There, I say. First seeds fall to soil later, but some can rest a while with you. Gentian hums that violet that means agreement and tries a test. 1 pair down the belt, 1 small rattle into the pocket, wish into the jar, nothing binding. I write. Chute jam cleared, seed husk wedge. Installed pocket under lip, 3 stitches quick tie. New rule, first seed to soil, second to sparrows, pocket for gentian, limit 1 pocket, keeper's honor. We go back to work. The valley approves with a breeze that travels the row like a compliment. The belt rhythm returns. The trough receives. The seed jar accrues a careful music. Yellow jackets arrive as predicted at tree 37. We share the orchard. They sip what leaks. We ask them not to volunteer our skin. I drape a bit of cheesecloth over the trough mouth for a stretch. They puzzle, offend no one, leave for simpler puzzles. Memory wants its space on the page now, while the work is warm and the light goes the color of old honey. Do you remember, I ask Gentian, the blackout harvest? He slows the belt to a thinking walk. Machines do that when story enters the field. We had rights to the night by then, which meant the day owed us candles and the evening owed us stealth. The grid had gone sideways for a season that turned into several. The valley refused to starve, while anyone's hands could still lift a basket. Gentian's track motors had been jury-rigged to sip from a flywheel the mill keeper let us use when the river cooperated. The belt ran on counterweights and hope. We worked under a cap over the lamp, a bucket cut and polished so the light fell like a hush. Children slept on quilts at the shed mouth. Dogs decided to be round. The moon wasn't helpful, but it didn't object. We wore our softest boots and said as little as possible. Gentian ran with the quiet of a very old book being opened in a library where everyone trusts one another. Fruit rode up the belt and into the trough and into baskets that would become breakfast, then school lunches, then a jar or 2 for winter when even stubbornness needs a hand. At midnight, the belt creaked, and we all looked at it at once. Me, Gentian, Grey Tomas with his hands wrapped in old shirts. The canvas had found a fray that could become damage if we let it. Grey Tomas turned the lamp down until starlight was more useful. We laid the belt on the pad and stitched it by moonlight. The 3 of us, 2 human hands and 1 Mechs steady frame. He held tension perfectly. We took our time. The thread agreed to be strong. The pears waited without complaint on the tree, because pears have manners. We finished, we set the lamp up, we ran the belt, the valley ate. It is not an interesting story if you need blood in it to pay attention. It is the story I keep forever. 3 hands keeping a belt whole in the dark. Boys who grew into men who still eat because somebody didn't sleep on a Tuesday. I write that much, and a little more, and then let the present remind me it's here. We move to the apples where red has finally overcome green. Gentian's pads adore apples. He adjusts the pitch of his hum a shade higher, and I can taste it as tart in my mouth even before I bite. At a little wild Fuji that never gave up its stubbornness, I find 3 birds in a row making the case for sharing. All right, I tell them. I take the far side, they keep the near. We make 4 baskets from a tree that motioned poor all spring. All 4 baskets are somehow generous. The seed pocket does its work. It keeps a token handful in reserve without convincing the shoot to act like a conscience. The jar fills at the right rate, glossy little boats of future tapping the glass with a sound like tiny decisions. Gentian finds a rhythm so sure that I have to breathe on purpose to keep from matching it and becoming machine myself. The belt steps, the canvas whispers, the fruit thumps soft in the trough with that polite, promising tone only ripe things can make. I make a small habit of touching his side plate every 10th pair. Thank you, thank you, thank you, until my hand knows it without me and does it without asking. Night builds on us like a roof. The kettle gives up its last good breath, which I pour into the cup and share with the air so it can remember being water. Moths read the lantern's grammar and get most of it right. Somewhere up on 5, Kite the weather mast shakes his silk and decides frost will pass us by with only a nod. I paused long enough to write the line that arrived earlier and waited for me to be worthy. We wrote the rule: first seed to the soil, second to the sparrows. The first seed we always tuck at the base of the mother tree, knuckle deep in the right corner of the root flare, a recipe older than the hill. The second we leave on the low wall where the sparrows gossip at dawn. The third we keep for trade or debt or experiment, depending on the week and the courage of the keeper. We finish the lower pears and half the apples before the moon finds courage and climbs the ridge. Its light makes the canvas a river. Gentian doesn't change tempo. He never works for moons or applause. He runs because it's time, and he stops because I say enough. Enough, I say. He slows the belt, then slows it again, then lets it stop like a voice choosing silence instead of running out of words. The trough gate closes with a padded kiss. The seed in the pocket rests without sulking. The jar on the crate wears its harvest like a necklace. Night checklist, harvest edition. Belt brushed, fray check every meter. 1 old stitch holding, mark for morning reinforcement. Pads wiped, trough pads inspected, 2 slightly worn, flip tomorrow. Seed chute cleared, pocket tied with quick release bow, tally of pocket seeds to ledger 12. Jars labeled, pear mix early, apple Fuji wild, silica packets in lids, shake each twice. Spill cloth rinsed, wrung, cheesecloth folded. Yellow jacket note in margin, intake screen intact, thank everything. Hands washed in the bucket that smells like pears and iron. Water to the time by grey Tomas's pipe. I stand on Gentian's deck for a moment because the deck holds the day in a way the ground never does. I can see the rows we worked, the slight lean of leaves that gave fruit away, the small brightness where a basket bumped my knee, the shadow this kind of work throws that isn't a burden but a blanket. Good run, I say. Gentian answers with a hum that lands exactly where late peaches live on the tongue. Gentian hummed the color of late peaches. We park him in his slot between the press and the barrel rack. He likes to sleep where the sweet air lives. I indulge the fiction that machines care for sense. I clip a note to his side plate for morning, belt, add 2 stitches AT lamp, so the day doesn't pretend it forgot the night's promises. I tuck 1 pair into the pocket near his control panel. It will perfume the shed enough to make tomorrow honest. The lantern reads the last page out loud in moth language, while I write the lines for the keeper, who will need to hear them again when wind and worry say we're late. Canvas remembered the old path. Hands remembered where to be soft. The seed keeps are not for hoarding, but for courage. I blow the flame to a tiny bead and cap it. The kettle clicks as the heat decides to belong to air again. Outside, the yard glows a little with stars. Inside, Gentian's violet hum slides to nothing, which is to say it becomes the hum of the shed and the press and the valley's stomach being full enough for sleep. I chalk the door with the mark that means fruit put down, tools quiet, seeds spoken for. It looks like a swirl with a dot and a small tail that points home. A fox reads it wrong and reads it right and minds its own business. Good night, Gentian, I say, hand flat on the warm side plate. Keep the pocket honest. I'll bring the stitches. You bring that peach hum. He doesn't answer because some answers are already in the room. The crickets take over. The valley rolls to one side, comfortable. The night holds. Chapter 5. Kite the Weather Mast. The valley holds its breath differently on weather nights. Words feel longer. Even the crickets leave space between opinions. Evening log, Valley 9. Late autumn's doorstep. Breath shows only if you ask it to. Damp at the ankles, dry at the cheeks. Sky like paper rubbed thin. North wind thinking about a visit. Frost possible if the clouds decide to be honest. Kite waits on the rise above Terrace 5, the little knoll that sees the air first. On the ledger, he's WX mast K2, telescoping body, 3 guy lines coiled tidy, a winch that purrs when the world is polite. We call him Kite because he loves string and sky the way a heron loves reeds, completely and without panic. He greets me by angling his headplate toward the west, the machinic equivalent of sniffing. His base lights glow the soft blue we keep for caution that doesn't want to scare anyone. The spool on his chest flickers a calibration note like a throat clearing. Evening, Kite, I say, setting the journal on the little stone that has been our desk since Grey Tomas marked it with a chisel star. The kettle goes on the pocket stove. I shake the thermos to wake the dregs. The ribbon tin clicks. Paper tags shuffle under my hand. Twine loops my wrist. We do the ritual first. I touch each guy anchor, East, west, north, palms flat, listening for the argument metal makes when it feels taken for granted. No argument tonight. I brush the mast's telescoping joints with the soft rag that knows this job, cloth on anodized skin, a whisper you can nearly hear. I check the silk in its box, folded, uncreased, a pale river ready to remember how to fly. Lift to mast 1, I tell him. Kite hums the note he uses for yes and rises a meter, then 2, the slow, jointed movement of a bird choosing to stand. He pauses in the way of a skilled hand offering you time to change your mind. I don't. The first sensor is a ribbon of silk stitched to a reed spine. To one end I tie a paper tag I cut this afternoon from the good stock. I write Frost, Valley 9, T5 East in neat letters that make sound in my head while they dry. The ink smells faintly of leaves and vinegar. I blow once. The letters settle. Ready, I say. Kite's winch answers with a ZZ zip soft as a page turn. I clip the silk to the line with a wooden pinch clip that learned patience from laundry work. The wind notices us and makes a polite attempt at conversation. Kite pays out 10 meters, then 15. The silk climbs like a very well-behaved thought. The tag whispers against air. Tick, 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 SHH. We set the second and third at angles to the first, so the valley can triangulate its own worries. One goes lower for cold air that crawls. One goes high enough to hear what the ridge means by rumor. The lines hum in 3 close pitches. Kite listens with his whole body. A snag, small and specific, arrives dressed as a reminder. On the second launch, a flirt of breeze tosses the silk toward a pear bough left intentionally long to shade the spring bench. The clip catches, of course it does, right on a twig's cunning fork. The silk twists once, twice, practicing a knot it doesn't want to know. The line says no in the way string says no, quietly and with a future problem built in. Hold, I tell Kite. He drops his hum a fraction. The winch freezes without yanking. I step into the shadow of the tree and breathe on the knot because breath is heat and heat is forgiveness. My fingers find the little spiral where reed meets thread. The cold tightens it correctly. My warm hands teach it to be wrong. I ease the loop with a nail, whisper there you go, and coax the clip back into honesty. The silk ventilates itself and remembers how to be a river. The line ZZZ zips free with an apology it doesn't say aloud. Gentle mode, I say. Kite lowers the winch speed and the line tension together, a waltz you can dance with a palm. The tag flutters, SHH, then settles to its tiny work. Measure, whisper, warn. I write. Launch 3 silks. 1 snag at pear bench, freed with warm breath, remember. Cold knots think too much. Gentle mode engaged. Tags marked. Kite's headplate shifts. He tastes the north. The wind comes clean through the saddles, slides down the terraces like a shy visitor, and considers the orchards without committing. We run the chimes. Not bells exactly. Kite carries a small rack of tuned leaves, a set of slender metal tongues cut to a scale no one taught him and everyone trusts. We set them only on nights when wind needs manners. He lowers the rack from a little drawer, and I hang it on the east guy line at chest height, where a person's body can explain it to itself while walking by. The tongues are marked with dots, 1 for slow, 2 for careful, 3 for go cover the squash. I pluck them, soft to loud, and the hill tells us how much it can bear. Tonight the 1 dot rings true The 2 dot rings slightly stubborn. The 3 dot declines to be helpful. Start with 1, I say. Kite nods by adjusting tension in the east line until the 1 dot hangs in the air with a voice you can believe. He breathes, wind does that through a mast, and the little leaf answers, din, din, din. Calm, not command, a metronome for a valley. We walk the lines. I tie the safety loops where a gust can spend itself without yanking a sensor into foolishness. My hands remember the knot faster than my mouth can name it. Cloth on twine, skin on paper, the small practical language of weather at work. The kettle decides to be useful. I pour and share the steam with Kite's headplate because machines get cold too, if by cold you mean error-prone. He whirs, pleased, and aims the plate back to north. This is the right place for memory. I write its title on the page, Chimes Night. Do you remember the storm we talked out of the valley? I ask him. He lowers the mast by 1 degree, the way you lean in when a friend begins a story you both lived. It was the year the river forgot where to go for a week. Spring had been brave. Summer arrived in a single afternoon with a hiss, and then the sky put on the wrong shirt entirely. Clouds stacked from the sea to the ridge like someone had been shelving weather in a hurry. Every radio in the county started learning new words for maybe. We raised Kite full height that evening and gave him all the chimes. We hung bright tags on the lower lines for the stubborn, the sleepy, and the wise. Wind came down the notch in the saddle like a dog that wasn't sure if it owned the yard. The crickets didn't bother pretending to be experts. Frogs went quiet in the swales, their first and best contribution on days like that. Silence. Kite listened. His lines took in the pitch and stretch and difference. This gust was short and toothy, that one long and bored, and he sang it back in metal leaf and measured pull. The valley heard its own voice returned. You could feel it in your teeth and in the brass button on the gate at Terraced too. Rill tuned his hum to Kite's low note. Gentian shut his belt with the dignity of a full table. Gimbal folded his arms and waited. Mossback stood on the wall with stones in his hands and decided which ones would not move. I walked the rows with a coil of twine and the faith of people who know ropes. When the gusts pretended to be decisions, the chimes answered 1, 2, 1, 2, not scare, not soothe, just count. You could see the apple boughs choose to be logged with knots instead of snapped by argument. We lost a top on a foolish young tree who had never learned to be humble. We bandaged it, and it lived anyway. The storm looked at us for an hour and forgot our name. It climbed the ridge and tried its luck elsewhere. We sent tea to the neighbors in the morning. It is difficult to make the Senate believe that a valley once talked a storm into using the door. It is enough that we write it down and hang the tuned leaves when the wind starts rehearsing. Back to now. Kite's sensors send tiny numbers to his chest dial, not the nervous stutter of bad nights, not the flat line of indifference. The needle hovers in the land of if we cover the pumpkins and ask the pears to share warmth, we'll be fine. Frost risk, I ask. He taps the scale to the low blue. Cold enough for breath lines, not enough for apology letters in the morning. Good, I say. Let's give the ground some dresses anyway. We walk the lower beds with burlap and old sheets from the schoolhouse that remembers everything children ever did in it. I tuck the squash like a grandmother who knows what drafts do to joints. I drape the time by Grey Thomas's pipe, not because time needs it, but because grief needs something to tuck. Kite watches over us with the patient eye of a bird on one leg. On the way back up the knoll, the second snag of the night tries to be a lesson again. The west tag, the one listening for ridge gossip, tangles itself with the corner of Kite's own mast in a way that suggests it is flattering the machine. Wind can get vain. I press a warm palm to the cold clip and it repents. The line hum becomes plainer. I write. Chimes hung, scale 1. Burlap down, squash, beans, time for the heart. West tag tried courting the mast, declined politely. Frost risk low blue, keep watch. The kettle has nothing left to give. I drink the last swallow and set the mug upside down to remember to wash it. The paper tags click together softly like moth wings practicing a new word. The chime gives a single din and doesn't feel obligated to repeat it. That's how you know the night is ours. Night checklist, weather edition. Guy line knots checked, safety loop set, slack accepted, not encouraged. Silk lines, clips seated, reed straight, no twist in the lower 30 feet. Chime rack hung on east line, 1 dot, west reserved. Mast joints wiped, a whisper of oil on upper sleeve, no more. Chest dial logged, temp due, wind from NNE at the speed of honesty. Chalk the knoll stone, a small triangle for north, a dot for frost risk, a curve for forgiven. I stand beside Kite and let the air read me for a change. My skin reports, sleeves adequate, face pleased, inside of elbow cool enough to make me keep the thermos sealed next time. My ears report, crickets on metered time, owls freelancing, the orchard sleeping with one eye open and liking it. Kite lowers his head a notch. Kite lowered its head like a heron. He is listening for the change you almost never catch with eyes. The moment a wind that came to hurt chooses instead to pass. Tonight the air decided to forgive us, I write, and immediately draw a small square around the line so that future me will find it and believe this was not bravado. We watch our own breath for a minute. It shows when we ask. It disappears when we forget to ask. The paper tags do exactly what we asked of them. Measure, whisper, warn, not perform, work. Before I leave him, I walk the mast one more time in a circle and tidy the coil of spare line on his base. I slide the chime rack half a hand lower so it can talk to the beans if the beans start listening. I put the ribbon tin in my pocket and the twine back on my wrist. I touch the stone where grey Thomas scratched the star, because on nights like this, it feels better to be the continuation of a hand than the beginning of one. Keep the watch, I tell Kite. If the wind remembers a bad idea, wake me by singing too. He hums the interval, 2 tones, pure, easy to hear through sleep, and lifts the mast 1 degree to read the higher part of the night. I chalk the base with our weather mark, small triangle, dot, curve, then blow the stove out. The wick sighs. The lantern on the path back to the house makes a little halo on the frost-suspicious grass. The valley decides to be a place again instead of a diagram. On the step, I write the lines that keep. Paper tags fluttered. Chime said 1. Cold knots think too much. Warm breath first, then hands. Tonight the air decided to forgive us. I listen for the promised 2-note alarm that I hope not to hear. Instead, I get the small music of silk online, ZZ zip so quiet it might be memory. Down on 3, Rill rolls in his sleep and hums contentment. Gentian dreams about canvas. Share keeps the soil's gossip to himself. The choir of tiny pollinators is a rumor in the hive, packed for winter, not yet song. The frost does not come. The valley does what it always wanted to do. It keeps us. Good night, Kite, I say into the north. Keep your lines true. I'll bring fresh tags at dawn. You bring whatever the air is willing to tell. Chapter 6. Mossback, the Stonewalker. The hill tastes of iron when it's been raining all day. Good weather for walls. Stones are honest when they're damp, and hands remember patience when the air keeps them cool. Evening log, Valley 9. After rain, low mist at knee height. Soil holding shape but willing to be persuaded. Crickets subdued, frogs content. A faint chill that makes leather tell the truth. Terraced 2's west face slumped by half a stone after the morning's soak. No collapse, just a sigh asking to be answered. Mossback waits by the stack, broad, low, deliberate. On the old spec card, he's geocarrier M5, but we stopped calling him by letters the first time he declined a foolish lift with more dignity than a mare. 2 tread skirts, 4 outriggers that deploy like a patient animal setting paws, and a pair of padded clamp hands that close the way good arguments do, slowly and once. Across his spine grows a mat of actual moss he refuses to let me scrub away. It keeps him cool and gives him his name. He greets me with a slow extension of an outrigger and a small hydraulic exhale that feels like a yawn you don't apologize for. The chassis settles a fraction lower, making his own ground level. Evening, Mossback, I say. Journal open on the wall stone that writes best, kettle on the little stove, glove leather creaking as it remembers the shape of fingers. I tap the line pins along the wall, 2 slim stakes and a string that defines where true ought to live. The string hums when plucked, an orchard note, not a harbour one. We start with the ritual every waller learns on the first dry day and keeps on the wet ones. Walk the face and listen. I run the mason's hammer along the stones, handle to ear, head to face. Tink, tink, thud, tink. The tinks are well seated. The thud is where we're wanted. The slumped section shows its bruise. 3 face stones leaning out, the hearting behind them having settled into leisure. Mossback angles his headplate toward the worst of it. He doesn't hurry. He deploys his outriggers one by one with a soft thunk, 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 a square of agreement with ground. He lowers the clamp hands into a polite open. Lift, I ask, palm against his side panel. He hums the low affirmative, and because he has manners, waits for me to move the twine aside. We never lift against the line, we lift to it. I clear the top stones first, capstone off with both hands, leather on grit, set on the mat. Then the next and the next. Mossback takes the third at my nod, clamps closing slow and padded, no squeal, no show of strength, just competence. He lifts to chest height and shifts 2 steps back without asking his treads to be clever. Stone on pallet, thud as soft as a blessing. We unlace the face down to the truthful place, 1 stone at a time, saving each to its own pile. Faces with faces, hearting with hearting, spalls in a bucket like coins for later. I pull the old roots out of the hearting, the thin, white threads that found their way in and forgot to leave. I set them aside for the compost. I will not ask a wall to make compromises for a plant that can have a different job. He knows when to help and when to wait. When a stone has the right weight for 2 hands, my 2 hands do it. When a stone wants to be the size of an afternoon, his hands learn its name. Check the trench, I tell him. He lifts the corner face stone and we see the footing, a bed of small, honest rock still graded to shed water, not keep it. Good bones. We will not punish a wall for doing what soil asked it to do under weather's argument. I brush the seating with a stiff brush, scritch, scritch, to remove the polite moss that thinks walls are the same as fallen logs. Moss has jobs. Walls have different ones. We build back into gravity, hearting in first from the center, tight and kind, so nothing can rattle. I choose a through stone, a flat, faithful slab that will tie front to back. Mossback clamps it, lifts and waits while my fingers test the bedding. The slab rests. I hear the right sound when I tap, talk not talk. The string approves by not moving at all. We climb 2 more courses, alternating sizes, so no seam rides another seam. It is the oldest courtesy in masonry. Never ask a line to carry the same worry twice. A snag arrives exactly when it should, at the keystone, where my hands think they deserve to be fast. I have chosen a large stone for that place, the kind that looks like a solution because it solves everything at once. Mossback lifts it. He hovers at the lip. I guide it with flat palms and breath. It goes where it should, almost, and then tells the truth. The corner wants something else. The big stone rocks on a high point. The wall answers through my hands. No. Set, I say, which means do not set. Mossback holds, clamps closed, weight on him, not on the wall. Hydraulics murmur a warning and then settle to the low purr he uses when he can hold for 10 minutes or 10 years without making either into a performance. I consider the temptation to force and choose the promise to wait. The stone sits there, a sermon about pride. Rain tickles my neck and says, "You can be done or you can be right." Down again, I tell him. He lowers the stone back to the pallet with the same ceremony he used to lift it. He does not sulk. Machines don't, in my experience. They wait for you to be who you said you intended to be. We try a smaller one. It is not as handsome. It is correct. The face sits to the string like a student to a good chair, upright without stiffness. The back engages the hearting like fingers interlaced. I tap. The note answers talk, not a bell, not a box. Right. Mossback exhales, H-H-H-H-H. A slow hydraulic sigh that sounds like patience rewarding itself. I write. Keystone tempted pride, declined. Smaller stone seated on 3rd try. Wall settled with a contented sigh. Note to future me, hurry is heavier than granite. We bring the courses up, tying with a 2nd through stone for so many reasons I would bore a child to name them. The face finds its batter again, the slight lean back into the hill that makes walls behave like they have ancestors. Mossback keeps the line honest. He extends a small laser at his brow, a suggestion of straightness you can ignore with judgment and obey with relief. Night comes earlier behind walls. Shadows stack in good order. I warm the fingers on the kettle and share the steam with Mossback's clamp seals. Rubber likes remembering it is not alone. Memory has been waiting on the far stone, where we set our mugs on the day two neighbors forgot that arguments don't feed terraces. Do you remember the carrying? I ask him. His outriggers settle a hair deeper, the way an old teacher sits at the start of a lesson where no one takes notes. 2 summers back, the West Road sent us a pair. Myra with her sleeves rolled and a jaw that believed in hard work so much it forgot to believe in rest, and Dane with his hands in constant motion and a way of adding just before every problem. They arrived with a wall of words and asked me to choose a side. I choose walls. Help me with this run, I said instead. No tools, hands and back. Stones remember better that way. They glared at each other in precisely the same language. I pretended not to speak it. I set them on opposite ends of the slumped section, handed them each a pair of leather gloves that carried the smell of 100 patient evenings, and told them the only rule that mattered until the wall said otherwise. No talking while you carry. You would be astonished how much an argument loses when it has to live inside breath. We lifted face stones together, heavier than Myra wanted to admit, lighter than Dane wanted to pretend. We set hearting. We fetched spalls. We learned, without saying it, that the right place to set a stone is the place where the other person can let go without flinching. They worked until their words slept. At the keystone, of course, the big stone tempted us. Mossback declined it. Myra laughed first, then startled at the sound of herself. Dane smiled without permission. We chose the smaller stone, and it fit. The wall accepted the apology they hadn't realized they were making to one another. By moonrise, we had repaired 10 feet and undone 2 years of cleverness they'd been using as armor. They thanked me separately the next morning, each claiming the idea had been theirs to be quiet. I did not correct them. The wall knows who did the work. Mossback does too. Back to tonight. The face is clean, the hearting tight. I place the capstones, long ones bridging, each seated on 2 below, the top course making the sentence the wall has been working to say. Mossback passes them like bread. 1, then 1, then 1. He will not rush the last. I'm grateful. We string the last line and stand 2 paces back, because vanity loves closeness and judgment loves a little distance. The wall looks humble again, which is how you know it will stay through winter. Night checklist, wall edition. Line pins pulled and coiled, string dry, no knots taught by rain. Hearting bucket emptied, and the little pieces tucked where they belong, not kept for later. Face tapped, every stone a tock, 2 mild tocks marked with chalk for spring attention. Drain at base cleared of leaves, water likes a path. Moss scraped where it meant to root, placed at the base of the old pear so it can have work that suits it. Mason's hammer wiped, glove seams oiled, leather not asked to be brave tomorrow. A journal sketch, 3 courses, 1 through stone marked, small rectangle in plan so the next keeper knows where the strength hides. I write the line I will need when I am tired in late winter, and the slope tells me a story about inevitability. We built a place that won't fall when we're tired. Mossback retracts an outrigger, then another, testing the set before he trusts it. He presses the face stone with his padded palm with the tenderness of a nurse checking a bandage. He approves without ceremony. He recenters his weight and hums something almost below hearing. Earth note, hill note, sleep note. I tuck the extra spools back into the pile with intention. A wall is injured by leftovers as surely as a stomach is injured by second dinners. The capstones shine where rain polished them. Tomorrow they'll go to mat again and belong to the hill. Before we leave, I chalk the repair in our stone ledger. A little plan view, the face like teeth, the through stone as a tongue you can count on. Grey Thomas once drew these in soot. I keep his habit. The chalk clicks in my pocket like a very small metronome for the walk home. Mossback prefers to sleep with his hull touching the stone stack, animal instinct, or just the physics of heat held and given back slow. I oblige him. He backs against the pile until the moss on his spine brushes lichen that is older than our debts. He settles by millimeters. When he's done, everything near him is calmer. I tug the glove cuffs, feeling the ache waking in the meat of my thumbs, the good ache that says you didn't argue with the right things. I pour the last tea on the ground because the ground always lends us its shoulders and deserves a sip. I write the last lines by lantern, spine bent to the work, the way a wall bends into a hill. Keystone chosen for truth, not pride. Two neighbors solved by carrying. Water has a path. String sang true. And because he's earned it. Mossback mossed. I blow the lantern out and wait for the dark to blossom honest. The repaired section doesn't glow, but it holds. The crickets find their louder voices again. Somewhere down by the pump, Rill hums to his channel. Up on the rise, Kite tests the north and decides to forgive us another night. We walk back slow. The mud releases my boots with soft sounds that feel like agreement. I chalk the shed door with the sign for finished wall, 3 stacked lines and a small diagonal, so morning can remember without pretending to have watched. Good night, Mossback, I say, palm flat to the cool stone and then to his warm flank. Keep the corner. I'll bring the line. You bring the weight that doesn't argue. Chapter 7. The Choir, Apiary Micromechs. Some evenings the valley is mostly sound. Tonight it's a held chord, soft, warm, and made of 1,000 small wings, remembering the same direction. Evening log, Valley 9. Early summer after a light heat. Clover open, time rough underfoot. Air at that kind temperature where wrists stop complaining. Sky broad and milk blue, swifts drawing cursive. If we listen kindly, we can hear what the flowers meant all day. The apiary sits below the schoolhouse wall where the stone remembers children's hands. 6 hives, 3 old, 3 new, painted in colors the bees forgive. Thyme green, pear white, river blue. Between the boxes stands their companion, Choir, our cloud of pollinator Micromech. Thimble-sized shuttles with soft film rotors and bellies that shine like barley sugar when the sun thinks about leaving. On a label someone once wrote P-cluster/CH, Choir, and the valley never called them anything else. They greet me as one greets at dusk, not louder, just clearer. A layered buzz, no edge in it, no hurry, folds over the thyme and the low lavender and the little basin where we keep water stones for feet that prefer not to drown. Evening choir, I say, setting the journal on the warm plinth the sun left for us at noon. The kettle finds the pocket stove. Smoker, cool and clean, sits with a twist of dry thyme and a curl of apple peel. I set the tuning fork down on the lid of the tool crate. The fork rings a private promise to my palm. The choir has a conductor they pretend not to have, a fist-sized node we call cantor, perched on a stake between the hives. Cantor's housing is old brass gone kind with weather. A small mic listens to the air. A smaller speaker answers with frequencies bees can forgive. The choir cluster rides that voice the way a murmuration rides wind. We start with the ritual. I walk the hives, hand flat to the side of each box, ear a hand's breadth away, listening not for loudness but for shape. Hive 1, steady, contented, a soft sea that the old keepers argue about and everyone accepts. Hive 2, busier, a half step up because someone opened clover early across the road. Hive 3, quiet, purposeful, 4, new wood and a young queen with a sure mind. 5, empty yesterday, today a rumor of scouts by the rim. 6, borrowed frames, potential. The choir modulates around them. Bees first, bots second. Always that way. Their propellers carry a low band that leaves bee ears alone and a higher shimmer for their own talk. ZZ, 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 a language like rain on paper. Bees come and go through them as if through long grass. No collisions, no arguments, just the choreography of plenty. A snag comes in with the sweetness. Small, specific. The kind that improves a keeper if they choose patience. Hive 2's front is busy with a new insistence. Fanning bees line the landing board and beat the scent outward, a living bellows. Inside, a higher tremolo edges the hum. Not panic, not joy. The sound a house makes when furniture is being moved and no one wants to say who decided. The queen is thinking, I say aloud to the time, to cantor to myself. The choir hears the change, and as they are built to do, tries to follow the hive's key. Their pitch slides a shade upward. The blend goes nearly right, and then not. A narrow dissonance prickles the air, the way nettle does 2 minutes after you put your hand in it. Hold, I tell cantor, palm on brass. The node's tiny speaker softens. The mic listens harder. The cloud steadies, but the edge stays. This is where the tools help, not to command, only to hear better. I take the beekeeping stethoscope, rubber tube, old metal bell, and warm the rim with my palm the way my teacher taught me so the hive doesn't flinch at cold. I place the bell against the side of the box, 2 boards up from the landing, and close my eyes. There is a heart in there, if heart is what you call the combined will of 10,000 small bodies centered on one larger one. It beats as a note more than a thud. Tonight that note has shifted. The queen has moved from her usual lane, and the workers are greeting her new idea with polite excitement and the tiniest thread of worry. A relocation, not a swarm, if we help the house remember its center. I pluck the tuning fork against my boot heel, ting, and hold it to the stethoscope bell. It hums in my bones at a soft enough not to be a lecture. Then I turn to cantor and touch the fork to brass. The choir hears my A and brightens to it. Then I ask them lower, lower again, until the dissonance unknots. We don't match the hive. We give it room. Set the choir below the queen's idea so bees have a floor to find, not a ceiling to push against. Lower by 3, I tell Cantor. He shivers and agrees. The cluster's band drops the width of a breath. The nettle tingle leaves the air. Fanning at the entrance keeps time instead of urgency. I write. Hive 2, Queen relocating lanes, fanners present. Choir drifted sharp, retuned Cantor -3, set floor not roof. Edge gone. Note, check brood frame placement in morning, add wax ladder on east. We give a little cool smoke at the front, not as a command but a suggestion. We can talk in the kitchen, not the doorway. Time and Apple ghost through the lid. The bees observe etiquette. The choir shifts to the new polite. I lift the lid gently, one corner only, tusk of propolis, a smell like warm bread and manuscripts. I see her, sleek, walking like a decision, flanked by attendants who look both proud and busy. She is not preparing to leave. She is reorganizing her rooms. Good. I set the lid down again. The smoker breathes once and closes its mouth. We seed the water bowls, 3 shallow saucers set with marbles. Bees drink safer with rocks under feet. I top them off from the kettle. Steam curls, wings flash. The choir keeps height like well-trained lanterns. Time to write the memory that belongs with this line of work and no other. The bell in bloom. Do you remember, I ask Cantor, the spring the schoolyard bell became a hive? He rests his hum on a shelf where a story can sit. It was 3 years back, clover outrageous, the orchard 2 weeks ahead, the valley too happy to be careful. A scout took a liking to the bronze bell on the schoolhouse wall, the one we ring for market days and not much else. She brought her sisters. They came like a rumor, then like rain, then like a decision. By noon the bell was a furred heart, hanging low with bees. We built the ladder and climbed, and half the valley came because of course they did. The teacher held the rope. The children learned a new kind of quiet. We took the bell down together, 6 hands on bronze, Mossback steadying the foot with a padded palm, the choir setting a halo above us like a cautionary hymn. On the ground we made a box of frames and a promise, set it beneath the bell, and tapped the rim with one finger, the way Grey Tomas taught me. The sound in the bronze told the bees what wood meant. It told them we weren't interrupting a miracle, only offering it a safer floor. They flowed down the ladder into the box over my sleeves, polite as fog. The queen went last, as queens do when they are sure of their people. We hung the bell back up and it smelled like honey for a month. The teacher rang it once very gently. The sound came out with a taste. I could name it now, patience. I write the part I forgot to say out loud then. We take swarms down but never out. We live with them. They live with us. Back to tonight. The choir makes their small passes over thyme and clover, over the last foxglove bells where bumblebees bump and complain about closing time. Their prop noise is barely sound now, more texture than note. Real bees thread between them without a second thought. I check the red flag we tie at the south corner to remind passers-by to walk soft. The ribbon nods and agrees. A child's laugh rings once from the road and then becomes footsteps going home. A moth rests on my wrist and reads the journal by feel. I write the lines that won't mean anything in a ledger if I don't put them in tonight. Bees returned dusted orange with marigold. Choir held the lane above the time. Air sweet with apple smoke. No panic, only purpose. There's one more small snag the evening saved for me, because it knows I like to think I'm finished. At Hive 5, the one that was rumor yesterday, I catch the excited little gate of scouts arriving with a location. They dance their maps on the threshold, shivering with north and distance and much good news. The choir, loyal and literal, concentrates in a reader's huddle to watch. It is too much crowd for a doorway. Back by 2 lengths, I tell Cantor, and tap the stake twice. He obliges. The cloud widens, leaves the performers a stage. The dance grows clearer. I read a little of it, where the creek bends twice, where the old stump pretends to be a hill, and stop before my guessing becomes an interruption. The kettle asks to be useful one last time. I pour the cup and leave the rest in the smoker lid for scent. The apple and thyme rise and then become night. Night checklist, Apiary edition. Cantor, bias held. Log pitch ladder, battery good. Water bowls topped, marbles rinsed, no sugar added. Smoker emptied, tin cleaned, ash to the base of the elderberry. Hive fronts clear, no weeds, no spider webs. Entrance reducers set for the young box. Chalk the schoolhouse stone. Small bell, small hex. Don't forget the bell in bloom. Choir hover height set to lantern. Above hats, below kites lines. Curfew offset to bees, not clocks. I walk once more between boxes, slow enough to let my breath be counted among the others. Hive 2's hum has settled back into the nearer note. The fanners fan like a chorus on the quiet parts. Hive 5's threshold dancers finish their map and go inside to sleep, if bees sleep, which I think they do by telling themselves a story about wings and waking in the same sentence. The choir dims, lights down the color of late straw, then off. They don't land. They nest in place, a light fog exactly where it should be if night had opinions about gentleness. I write the lines that finish the page. The valley tasted like patience. We left bowls of water under time. I blow the smoker's last breath across my glove, the way a teacher taught me to thank a tool. The moth leaves my wrist for the lantern, and the lantern for the dark. Somewhere down by the pump, Rill murmurs a low agreement. Up on the rise, Kite turns his head by a degree and decides the air will be kind enough. The schoolhouse bell is only bronze again tonight, but I swear it holds a sweetness you can't chalk away. If the children ring it tomorrow for no reason, I will not stop them. Good night, choir, I say. Keep to the lane above sleep. I'll bring fresh marbles. You bring the soft buzz that tells the heart not to hurry. Chapter 8. Lumen 12, the Night Watch. Some nights the valley asks to be tucked in. Not corrected, not managed, just seen, named, and made small enough to sleep inside. Evening log, Valley 9. Edge of winter, crisp at the nose, kind in the lungs. Stars honest, no haze, no tricks. Breath moves like moths, frost whitening the grass where the moon has time. North wind changed its mind and stayed home. Lumen 12 waits at the foot of the lane, lanterns dim and glass polished the way pride polishes, quietly. The old plate still reads Lumen Series Patrol /12, but the 12 is half rubbed away by gloves and years. We call him Lumin like we'd call a friend by his given name. Compact body, low wheels, a lantern mast that can tilt and bow, 4 side lamps at hip height for path work, a little drawer for wicks and glass, a smaller one for the small miracles nobody writes manuals for. He greets me with a nod of the mast and a very small bloom of light. Hello without waking anyone. I set the journal on the lane stone that remembers writing best in cold, and the kettle on the pocket stove, and my hands around the mug even before it deserves them. Evening, Lumin, I say. He answers by brightening each lamp a fraction in turn. Left, right, mast, tail, then bringing them all back to his preferred humility. If I tip my head, I can see the valley reflected in his glass, as if it were something we could carry. We keep a ritual for winter watches. I check the wick box, cotton rolls like little moons. I sniff the lamp oil, no old smoke, no dust. I wipe the glass in long, slow circles. Glass likes patience. Lumin extends his wick trimmer like a surgeon offering a familiar instrument. I trim each with a snip you feel more than hear. We set off. The night watch path is older than my bones and kinder than my plans. Lumin leads and I walk at the wheel, fingers on his side plate. He knows where to go. I know who to check. Between us, we convince the dark to wear the right size. First, the orchard. He keeps his mast so low that branches don't feel shown off. We pass Cher's pad and Lumin flicks a lantern left, an old habit to greet an older friend. Cher answers in the way of sleeping machines, a weight settling deeper, a tone lowered by a hair. I touch the pad post as we go. Sleep, Cher. Soil can wait for morning. Lumin stops by row 12, where Gimbal folded himself last week. He tilts the mast toward the pair that holds the blue ribbon. The ribbon nods in a breeze too small to belong to weather. It belongs to attention. I tie it again, not because it needs tying, but because nights like this like to feel hands. We cross the yard where Gentian lives between press and barrel rack. Lumin lowers his lamps to the shed threshold and lets them shine just enough to catch canvas. The belt glows a little. The seed jar catches a point of star and holds it like a modest jewel. Belt stitches in the morning, I say, remembering and writing it at the same time. Lumin slides open his tiny drawer and offers me the stub of pencil I didn't know I'd left there last week. I write on the card clipped to Gentian's side plate, belt, add 2 stitches AT lamp and tuck the pencil back. He closes the drawer with a neat click as if sealing a letter. We go by the pump house. Rill sleeps ports toward the channel. The water tells the sort of quiet truth that runs under everything, still cold here. Lumin shades his mast so his light doesn't bother water's memory. He noses the coupling once with a soft tap. The gasket, newly content, declines to complain. We climb the rise to Kite's knoll. The mast there is a darker dark against stars. Lumin dims until he is lantern only at the ground, and we listen for the 2-note alarm I asked him to sing if the air changes its mind. It doesn't. Kite wears the night like a heron wears cold, competently, with a long neck for distance. Forecast, I whisper. Kite answers with the absence of trouble. Lumin approves with a barely perceptible widening of his tail lamp, the mechanical version of a nod you give only yourself. We descend to terrace 2, and the west face where Mossback chose to teach me patience. The repaired stones are a good quiet shape in the dark. Lumin raises the mast one finger so the light brushes the capstones without naming them. The wall shines enough to claim health, not enough to ask for compliments. Mossback rests with the stone stack at his back. The moss on his spine is a small night meadow. Hold the corner, I tell them both, and mean it for mornings I haven't met yet. We loop back uphill through the schoolhouse yard. The bell hangs still as a held breath. Lumin gives it a respectful dot of light. The bronze gives the light back the way kindness does, without magnifying itself. Hive fronts at the apiary are quiet. The choir sleeps in place at lantern height, like a line of light fog ordered to behave. Lumin steps wider here, widening his circle to keep the bees out of the bright. I refill the marble bowls from the kettle because ritual tastes better than water. Soft buzz in the morning, I promise. Cantor hears me and pretends he didn't. We pause by the path marker under the old walnut. The marker lives where it's always lived, flat stone with a tiny inset mirror, star at boot height for lost nights. Tonight it fails with dignity. Frost has blindfolded it. The mirror shows moon only as a smear. Lumin lowers his mast as if to ask, "Would you like a new star?" "Show me," I say. He opens the smaller drawer. There are 3 pebbles in it, and the reason I let him keep drawers. 2 are ordinary and round, good for pockets. One has been polished by kid hands to a gleam not quite mirror, not quite river. He tips the drawer a breath toward me. I take the pebble like a ceremony that hasn't written itself yet. We kneel. The ground is stiff with first frost. I scrape the old mortar gently with the edge of the trowel and free the place where we once pressed a mirror. Lumin holds steady light, a circle just the size of a new name. I seat the pebble with 2 fingers and a thumb. It clicks, stone against stone, the sound of an idea arriving. Light catches, the star at boot height returns. "There," I tell him, "a new star, yours." He does something small with his lamps that isn't vanity. If lights could bow, this is what it would be. I write. Path marker under walnut, mirror blind with frost. Set a new star, child-polished pebble. Lumin asked, we obliged. Note, tell the children which stone is theirs now. We turn for the long loop, lower terraces, the gate, the far berm where foxes argue in ways that keep chickens honest. Lumin knows the order. He shortens and lengthens his stride to the valley's breathing. At terrace 7, he pauses of his own will by the bench where Grey Tomas once pretended he could fix every problem from a seat. I sit for a minute in the seat he warmed into legend. Lumin draws his light into the size of a coin and waits without counting. Memory belongs here, the last circuit. Do you remember, I ask him, the night the old keeper walked you home? Lumin lowers his mast, so the light lives in his glass only. If a machine can listen the way a person would want to be listened to, he does. It was winter without apology. Stars pulled the cold tight. Grey Tomas wore the scarf everyone has seen 100 times, and no one can picture any other colour on. He had mended Cher's tread seen by lamplight, and told Gentian a story about belts and boys, and the moon too low for harvest. He had tuned Kite's chimes with fingers that had tuned other lives. He had oiled my father's hammer handle 2 winters before his own last winter, and left the handle smelling like linseed and patience. That night he took the night watch path slower than he needed to, on purpose. Lumin had 5 fewer tricks then, and still managed to be wise. They dimmed lamps one by one in the order Grey Tomas loved. At the marker under the walnut, before we had mirrors there, just a scraped stone, he tapped the rock with his knuckle and said, "You are my favorite star, because stars that hold your feet are better than stars that forget your name." He placed a pebble he'd kept in his coat for years instead of a mirror, which is probably why we use pebbles now. They ended where they always ended, at the gate, hinge oiled, latch remembering which way home is. He leaned on the gate, and Lumin leaned his mast against the night, and they didn't speak for the good amount of time. They made the world small enough to sleep inside. He handed me the journal at the step and said, "The trick is to write what the valley would write if it had hands." The morning after, he was gone in the way people go when they teach you a small number of large truths and then leave them to be rehearsed. That first night after, Lumin led and I followed, and the path was the same path but newer and lonelier and correct. I touch the bench, Lumin lets me. Back to now. The frost has taken the grass at the edges of the path and laid it down like a haircut. The lane's lamps are little moons at boot height. Lumin goes to each, lifts with the mast, lowers with the tail, a sequence he doesn't change unless the night asks him to. Some nights want light longer. This one is brave. Lamps dim at his pace, and the dark accepts them with thanks. We reach the gate. The hinge tests us and finds we still oil correctly. I drop a bead on the pin anyway, because oil is cheaper than recollection. Lumin shines the mast up the post where the chalk lives. I draw the mark for a kept watch. One small circle, 3 dots below it, a curve that means forgiven, and the chalk, cold in my fingers, likes the work. He nudges my sleeve then, a small nudge, the way an old dog would if it had something to show that isn't an emergency and is still important. At the base of the post, the little brass plate we bolted on years ago has loosened at one screw. Wind hasn't taken it, time has. He extends the tiny screwdriver from his drawer. I tighten the screw and it seats with a satisfying snug. The plate reads, "Night watch, be kind." "Bossy," I tell the plate. Lumin warms his lamps by a hair. We let the admonition stand. We turn for home by the long way on purpose, because good nights accept more walking. Lumin trims his wicks as he goes. His little snippers whisper chick-chick under glass. He takes one lamp to a thin line just this side of dark and holds it there for 3 breaths, an old trick he uses when deer want to use the path without telling the path they own it. We stop at the shed for the last round of gratitude. This is not efficiency. This is debt. "Share," I say at the pad, for listening to dirt and for giving slips. Gimbal at the pair, for folding like a cathedral and teaching me to cut later. Rill at the pump, for songs under boots and for reeds that persuade instead of punish. Gentian at the belt, for the color of late peaches and the honesty of pockets. Kite at the knoll, for the chime that says one and means enough. Mossback at the wall, for weight that knows how to wait. Choir at the hives, for holding the lane above sleep and leaving room for bees to dance. Lumin at my side, for making the night small enough to fit in a hand. He lowers his mast for that, just a degree, just enough to be seen by no one and remembered by me. Night checklist, watch edition. Wicks trimmed, glass wiped, Oil-topped log ounces, no soot smudges. Path markers, walnut star replaced, pebble, record in map, other mirrors clear of frost. Gate hinge oiled, latch tested, brass plate tightened. Chalk marks placed at gate, knoll, pump lintel, kept, forgiven, flow but watch. Shed, lanterns lowered to coin, snips drawer locked and unlocked, then locked again. Note cards clipped, gentian stitches, kite tag count, hive 5 watch scouts. Write the line grey toe mass would have wanted written, even if it's plain. I write it. I thanked each slow machine by name. We're done, which is different than finished. Lumin knows the difference. He guides me back to the step at the house, the one with the worn groove grey Tomas left, and I'm deepening. He sets his lamps to the softest setting, amber coins along his base, a mast that is more thought than light. The kettle has one last kindness. I pour half the cup and give the rest to the ground near the time by grey Tomas's pipe. Steam rises, conducts a small meeting with the air, adjourns in good order. I sit and listen for the part of night that shows up only after work stops pretending it can fix anything else. It's all there. Crickets mending the day with little stitches of sound. An owl being a comma between fields. Water over stone making sentences Rill already hummed. Wind choosing to write nothing at all. A distant fox deciding not to editorialize. I write the last lines for the night, and for future me, who will read them on a week when everything tries to be loud. Valley 9 answered with crickets. We let the night keep us. I close the journal. The cloth on the cover makes a sound like yes. Lumin tips his mast toward the stars the way you tip your hat at a friend leaving the party the right way. He dims each lamp in the order we agreed to years ago. The dark accepts its job back. The lane becomes a memory of itself, which is sometimes when it is best to walk. Good night, Lumin, I say. Keep the little star by the walnut bright enough for feet and quiet enough for sleep. I'll bring the wicks. You bring the part of night that behaves. He doesn't answer. He lowers his mast until his own glass shows only the world and not himself. That seems like a lesson. I latch the door with the quiet latch. On the other side, blankets remember the shape of bodies and bodies remember they belong in them. The watch is kept. The lamps are low. The valley's eyes are closed without being shut. We sleep. The machines do whatever beautiful listening machines do when they're not asked to move. And the night, satisfied with the list made and kept, lays itself down like linen and stays. Epilogue. Ledger leaves. Morning log, Valley 9. First clear day after a kind winter. Light like water on stone. Soil making small promises. Breath that forgets its work. The journal is thicker now. The spine remembers my thumb. The cover cloth has learned to say yes the way grey Tomas promised it would if I kept telling the truth in it. There are more pages than we'll need and fewer than I want. That feels right. Ori came back from the Ridge School, taller than my memory had left room for. He walked the night watch path with me last week and did trip on the walnut star. He kept his shadow where it belongs beside Cher's track without having to be told. He ties ribbons softer than I did at his age. The birds took it as a compliment. We made rounds this morning, not because anything was loud, but because quiet invites feet. Cher had his nose to the pad line, listening for the first furrow. I ran the bristle brush along the right tread and showed Ori where moss pretends to be gone. He salted the grit with 2 fingers, which is the correct number. "Walk with your shadow," I said out of habit. He smiled without arguing. Gimbal unfolded at row 12, like a book you don't own yet, but know you need. We checked the blue ribbon under the nest limb from last year. It had weathered into a paler word that still meant later. Ori retied it with care and chose to leave a white thread for winter work we can already see from here. He has the economy of someone who learned in rooms with not enough chairs. At the pump, Rill woke himself with a shiver and put 2 whiskers into the mouth of the channel, as if greeting a friend at the door. Ori cleared sluice 3 with the reed while I listened for that first polite pop. He heard the bubble before I did. "Song?" he asked Rill. Rill obliged with a D low enough to strengthen a spine. Ori grinned with the humility of someone who knows he didn't make that note happen, only asked well. Gentian wore winter dust with dignity. We added the 2 stitches at the lamp we promised and pressed the seam flat with the warm heel of my hand. The seed pocket had kept exactly enough, 12 small tongues of future resting in cloth. Ori read the label aloud, "Pear mix early," and tucked the jar away as if it might break the day if he hurried. "First seed to the soil," he said. "Second to the sparrows." We left the second on the wall where the gossipers gather at dawn. On Kite's knoll the chime leaves clinked in a scale that said forgiven. No frost in the near days, a front considering manners by week's end. Ori plucked the 1 dot and laughed when the hill agreed. "This is the right kind of instrument," he said. "The kind that tells you when not to play." Kite angled his headplate north, pleased to be understood in a new mouth. Mossback had slept with his back to the stone stack as usual. We tapped the west face with the hammer, tock, 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 and found no sulk. Ori ran his palm along the capstones as if they were a book of Braille and said the line I didn't know he'd memorized. "Hurry is heavier than granite. He'll do fine." The choir were out already, forgiving our early presence and making small lanes above time. Hive 5, last year's rumor, has a queen who walks like a sentence that knows where it ends. Cantor rested his band just under theirs as he should. Ori touched the brass with a knuckle hello. "Floor, not roof," he told the air, and the air believed him. Lumen waited at the foot of the lane for the tour he knows by heart. We don't take him in daylight unless we're teaching. Today qualifies. He warmed his lamps by a finger to show Ori the order, left, right, mast, tail, and then settled back into the kind of humility sunlight deserves. Ori found the little drawer without being told. "Wicks," he said, counting the moons. He slipped one into his pocket and then out again, because pockets and lamps have different appetites. At the schoolhouse, the bell hung as it always does, which is to say, like a small promise. The children have painted the rim with flowers that look like stars. I chalked the stone beside it, tiny bell, tiny hex, for the day we took a hive down and not out. Ori asked for the story again. I told it shorter this time. He didn't need it long. He knows where to put his hands. We sat on Grey Tomas's bench and practiced not improving anything for a whole 5 minutes. Practice is the right word. He told me the Ridge School teaches maps that move. I told him these terraces have been moving maps under our feet since before we had pockets. We agreed that drawing a line is less important than walking it, and that both are better than naming it in rooms that don't have windows. This isn't a farewell. It's a handover of a Saturday. I'm not going anywhere the valley can't find me, but the ledger needs to hear me say it. Ori will take 3 nights a week this season. He'll keep the journal when I'm out past the crest or at the market or sleeping the honest sleep that follows good wall work. He'll misjudge once or twice and write it down. He'll be proud of something that wasn't his to be proud of and then learn it was all of ours. He'll trim wicks in the wrong order and then the right one forever. He will remember to leave bowls of water under time because the choir and the bees agree about thirst. I pulled the thin cord from the journal's back pocket, the one grey Thomas tucked there for the day he decided I was ready to keep a book with my hands instead of my mouth. I tied 3 knots in it while Ori watched, 1 for hush, 1 for ask, 1 for wait. He raised an eyebrow in that way the young invent when they think they're the first to do it. Different story, he said. Same knots. Exactly. We walked the lane home with Lumin, humming nothing in particular. At the gate, I chalked the circle and 3 dots and the forgiving curve because ritual is how you train memory to get out of your way. Ori ran his knuckle under the brass plate until it sang a little. Night watch. Be Kind looked back at him and didn't need to be explained. On the step, I wrote this with his shoulder against mine so the letters can remember both of us. He drew a tiny stone in the margin where the walnut star lives. It looks exactly like a pebble a child might polish. This page will live where it belongs, between the one about the chimes night we didn't need and the one about the belt we stitched under a half moon. When the book is full, we'll put it on the shelf next to grey Thomas's and start another with the same cloth that says yes when your hand asks. If you find this later, if you're the next keeper or only passing and kind, these are the lines I want you to hear spoken aloud by the path itself. Walk with your shadow. Brush and grit beat moss and pride. First seed to the soil, second to the sparrows. Floor, not roof. Hurry is heavier than granite. 1 chime means enough. We thanked each slow machine by name. We let the night keep us. The valley will write the rest with wind and water and the weight of stones explained properly. Our job is to read. Kettle off, chalk capped, ledger closed to the sound that means again. The keeper of Valley 9, with Ori at the edge of the page, smiling into the margin.